You ever think about those books that just, well, they kind of sneak up on you? Start small, almost like a secret, and then bam, they end up shaping generations of readers like, wow, today we're diving into one of those J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit.
Oh, absolutely. And the Times even called it one of the most influential books of our generation. And, it all started with this unexpected journey. It's pretty amazing.
It really is. And what's fascinating is how it grew organically, right? I mean, picture this, a father just making up stories for his kids.
Yeah. And then that turns into a world so captivating. It just explodes into, well, the Lord of the Rings, really.
It really shows you the power of a good story, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
So today, we're going deep, a real deep dive into those first chapters of The Hobbit, based on the excerpts we've got here.
Okay, cool.
Our mission, should we choose to accept it, is to see how Bilbo Baggins, this perfectly content hobbit, suddenly finds his life flipped on its head by an adventure he never saw coming.
Yeah, and if you think about the whole story, these early chapters, they're like the foundation.
Right.
They introduce you to Bilbo, what this whole quest is about, and a lot of those classic Middle-earth elements. It's that point where his normal, predictable hobbit life is shattered by, well, the totally unexpected.
Totally. And the material we have, it lays it all out, We'll touch on how the book came to be, then jump right into that wonderfully chaotic party at Bag End.
Oh, yeah.
Then, of course, the unfortunate run-in with those less than bright trolls,
Right.
a peaceful pause in beautiful Rivendell, and then that crazy trek over the Misty Mountains into Goblin territory.
Ugh, goblins.
Along the way, we'll be pointing out key characters as they pop up and those early plot points that really get the ball rolling. So let's unpack this thing, shall we?
Yeah.
Starting with an unexpected party.
Sounds good.
It really kicks off with a bang, wouldn't you say? Tolkien throws Bilbo and us, the readers, right into the thick of it.
He does, he does. And it all starts with Gandalf just showing up out of the blue. And then there's that mysterious mark he leaves on Bilbo's door.
Yeah, that's a first sign that things are about to go haywire in his nice, quiet life.
It is, definitely.
And then there's this sound, or rather the lack of it, because hobbits aren't big on doorbells, are they?
Nope, not really.
And that silence heralds a steady stream of, well, unexpected guests, to say the least.
Great.
You've got the first four dwarves, Fili, Kili, Dwalin, and Balin.
Yeah, and Fili even tells Bilbo straight up, more are coming.
Can you imagine poor Bilbo wondering if he's suddenly running some kind of Babostero bed and breakfast?
I know, right?
And then, sure enough, another knock, louder this time.
Yeah.
And in come five more. Dori, Mori, Ori, Oin, and Gloin. It's almost comical, this sudden invasion, turning his peaceful hobbit hole into a rowdy, crowded pub.
It really shows you that clash right from the start between how hobbits like things neat and tidy,
Yeah.
and then you have the dwarves a lot more unrestrained, shall we say.
Totally, yeah. Just think about what they're demanding. All that food and drink, ale, porter, coffee, and cakes and scones.
Oh, those scones!
It's like they've got bottomless stomachs, and they don't care one bit about Bilbo's perfectly organized pantry.
Yeah, one bit.
It's like everyday life meets fantasy, and they're having a showdown right there in his dining room.
Exactly, yeah.
And just when Bilbo thinks he's sort of, got a handle on this loud bunch, there's a sharp rap on the door, a firm rat-tat on that green door.
Oh, boy.
And in they tumble, four more dwarves, Byfur, Bofur, Balmer, and trailing behind them, Gandalf himself, leaning on his staff and chuckling away.
He seems to find it all very amusing.
Oh, he does, and he says, carefully, carefully.
Yeah.
But you can tell the damage is done, both to Bilbo's dishes and his peace of mind.
Oh, definitely. And what's interesting is this constant arrival of dwarves, It creates this feeling of Bilbo being completely swamped.
Right.
Like he's lost control of his home, his routine, everything. And then, bam, Thorin Oakenshield makes his grand entrance.
Oh, yes, Thorin.
And suddenly, the whole mood changes. It's not just a party anymore. It's serious, a dark business, as Thorin called it.
It definitely is. Thorin's arrival is a game changer. He addresses everyone, Gandalf, dwarves, and Mr. Baggins, and announces that they're all gathered in the home of their friend and fellow conspirator, this most excellent and audacious hobbit.
Which, must come as a bit of a shock to Bilbo.
I'd say so.
Yeah.
And then he lays it all out, the reason they're there, a quest to reclaim their long-lost gold.
And Bilbo's reaction is just perfect.
Oh, it's brilliant.
That initial reluctance, so Hobbit-like, he wants nothing to do with adventures. And then that outburst, like a shriek building up inside him until it bursts out.
Like the whistle of an engine coming out of a tunnel.
Exactly. And then he collapses crying, struck by lightning, over and over again.
It's perfect. It captures his shock, his complete refusal to get mixed up in their plans.
It really does.
He's the ultimate homebody confronted with the call of the wild, isn't he? But Gandalf, always the puppet master, brings them back to this dark business. He whips out Thror's map of the mountain.
Oh, that map. It's a crucial part of the story.
It is, and it shows the dragon, marked in red, very ominous, and, more importantly, that secret side door that everyone had missed.
Right. The map doesn't just tell them where to go, but it hints at how they might get around the dragon, which, is a pretty big obstacle.
It is.
And Thorin, he's immediately hooked. He wants to know how Gandalf got the map, why he didn't have it as the rightful heir.
Yeah, you can see how deep this history runs for the dwarves. They're longing for their lost kingdom.
Absolutely.
And Gandalf explains it all. He talks about Thror's tragic death in the mines of Moria, killed by Azog the Goblin.
That name, Azog, it sends shivers down your spine, even this early in the story.
It does.
Yeah.
And Gandalf reveals that Thrain, Thorin's father,
Yeah.
gave him the map. It's like you can feel all those layers of history and family being woven into the story right there.
It adds so much depth to what drives the dwarves.
It does.
It's not just about treasure, it's about reclaiming their heritage, avenging what happened to their people.
Right. And then comes that moment of revelation, literally under the moonlight. They read those moon letters on the map and uncover that crucial bit of information about the secret door. 5 feet high the door, and 3 may walk abreast.
It's such a Tolkien thing, isn't it?
Oh, it is.
This hidden message that only shows up under certain conditions. It adds this air of ancient mystery.
It really does.
It emphasizes that there's all this hidden knowledge in the story, Things aren't always what they seem. There are secrets tucked away everywhere.
Absolutely. And to wrap up this rather extraordinary party, the dwarves burst into song, a rousing tune about reclaiming their lost gold. Inspiring for them, maybe. But for Bilbo, I imagine it just added to his already frayed nerves and killed any chance of good night's sleep.
Oh, I'm sure.
Safe to say, Bilbo's had a Wednesday he won't be forgetting anytime soon.
Oh, for sure.
So let's move on to Chapter 2, Roast Mutton, and see how he handles the aftermath, shall we? When Bilbo wakes up, it's like, well, the morning after a hurricane hit his house.
Yeah.
The mess in his dining room, those mountains of dirty dishes, it's all proof that the previous night wasn't just a weird dream.
It's a very real reminder.
It is, and his feelings are all over the place. Relief that the dwarves are gone, but then this little twinge of disappointment, which is interesting. He starts to hint at that adventurous side of him, the Tookish blood, starting to stir.
It's crucial to see that conflict in him.
It is.
Because he's a creature of comfort, but something about that night, despite all the chaos, it's gotten under his skin.
Exactly. And just as he's getting back into his routine, or at least trying to figure out how to tackle that mountain of dishes, he sees something unexpected. Gandalf and the dwarves are gathered around a fire, having a meal.
And this is where the story takes a darker turn.
It does.
Their dinner companions turn out to be trolls.
Oh, those trolls.
Yeah.
Tom, Bert, and William.
Tolkien really paints a picture of them. Their brutish faces, their size, those strange legs, and their crude way of speaking. They're not very pleasant characters.
Not at all. And the way they talk about how they want to cook the dwarves, it's gruesome, but also kind of absurdly funny, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Arguing about whether to roast them slowly, wince and boil them, or squash them into dwarf jelly.
Delicious.
That's a bit of a contrast to the nice supper Bilbo was probably looking forward to back in his Hobbit hole.
Definitely. And it really raises the stakes. They're not just dealing with noisy guests anymore. This is a real threat to the dwarves' lives. And Bilbo, in a moment of maybe misplaced bravery, tries to step in.
Or maybe just being a polite hobbit, even when it's completely inappropriate.
Could be.
It leads to this wonderfully chaotic fight, almost slapstick.
Yes.
Bilbo grabs Tom's leg, which is described as thick as a tree trunk,
Oh, yeah.
and promptly gets flung into the bushes.
Oof.
And then Bert gets a burning branch right in the eye. The trolls are clearly stronger, but you got to give the dwarves credit. They put up a good fight, even if they do end up captured, all bundled up in sacks.
It really shows you how vulnerable they are out in the wild.
It does.
Yeah.
And Bilbo, hiding in the bushes, all bruised and terrified, suddenly realizes the very real danger that comes with adventure.
His sheltered life hasn't prepared him for this?
Not at all.
No.
And just when things look really bad for the dwarves, Gandalf shows up, right on time as the sun rises.
Like a knight in shining armor.
He does.
Yeah.
And the way he saves them is pretty clever, wouldn't you say?
I would.
He mimics the trolls' voices, tricks them into arguing about how to cook the dwarves.
Oh, that's good.
They bicker and fight until the sun turns them to stone. Their own stupidity is their downfall. Classic fairy tale ending.
It's a classic trope, the creatures of darkness being vulnerable to light.
Right.
But Tolkien uses it really well here.
He does.
And it really establishes Gandalf as their protector, their guide throughout the journey.
Absolutely. So, with the trolls out of the picture, the group finds their cave, and it's exactly what you'd expect from trolls.
Oh, yeah.
A jumble of food, piles of gold, and rather disturbingly, clothes that belong to their victims. It's a stark reminder of the dangers they're facing.
A very real reminder.
And in this grim place, they find something important. Gandalf and Thorin each take a sword, Glamdring and Orcrist. And Bilbo, maybe feeling a bit left out, picks a knife, which is described as more like a short sword for a hobbit. These are not your average run-of-the-mill weapons.
No, they're not.
Gandalf says they look like good blades, noting that they weren't made by trolls or men from around there.
Hinting at something more ancient, perhaps elven.
Exactly. He says they'll know more once they can read the runes on them.
It's a bit of foreshadowing, right?
Oh, definitely.
Letting you know these swords are going to be important later on.
They are.
And these swords, they're a link to a more heroic past, a time of great battles against evil in Middle-earth. They're not just weapons, they're symbols of this larger conflict that Bilbo and the dwarves are getting pulled into.
They are. And before leaving that smelly troll cave, they stock up on food and snag a barrel of ale.
Smart move.
Very smart. After such a crazy night, I bet they were ready for a good meal and some rest.
I think we all would be.
So they've narrowly avoided becoming troll dinner. What awaits them in Chapter 3? A short rest.
Well, after that troll encounter, their journey takes them to a much nicer place, a hidden valley near Rivendell.
Okay.
And it's here they meet elves for the first time.
Oh, the elves.
Tolkien describes them beautifully, their joy, their singing, how beautiful they are. It's a huge contrast to those grumpy trolls in their dark, gloomy cave.
It's like a breath of fresh air for them and for us reading about it.
Totally.
And then they reach the last homely house where they're greeted by Elrond. He's presented as this wise, knowledgeable figure, someone who's going to be vital to their quest.
Yeah, Elrond represents the ancient wisdom of the elves, their deep understanding of Middle-earth's history.
Right. And when he looks at Throra's map under the moonlight, he can read the hidden moon letters, revealing exactly how big the secret door is.
Yeah.
It just emphasizes how wise and connected to ancient lore he is.
It shows you he's not just a host, he's a scholar, a keeper of secrets.
He is. And his knowledge doesn't stop there. He also recognizes those swords, Glamdring and Orcrist.
Really?
Oh, yeah. He reviews their history. They were forged in the elven city of Gondolin, used in the Goblin Wars. It adds another layer of importance to the weapons Gandalf and Thorin are carrying.
This is important because it links these random things found in a troll's cave to this grander story of good versus evil in Middle-earth. It's like those swords are relics of a heroic age.
They are. And their stay in Rivendell really lives up to its name, a short rest. They enjoy the beauty of the valley, the good food and company, and most importantly, Elrond's advice. It's a much-needed break before they face the next leg of their journey.
Rivendell's a sanctuary, a place of peace and wisdom where they can recover and prepare for what's ahead. It really highlights how important those safe havens are when you're facing so much danger.
It does. But as we know, moments of peace never last long in these stories, do they?
Not usually, no.
Chapter 4, titled Overhill and Underhill, sees them setting off on a really tough part of their journey, crossing the Misty Mountains.
Those mountains are no joke. Tolkien describes all the dangerous paths and passes, all infested by evil things and dreadful dangers, as he puts it.
It sounds lovely.
Oh, yeah. Having Elrond and Gandalf's guidance here is crucial. It shows how experienced they are, how well they know the danger.
They need all the help they can get, because even with the best guides, it's still a brutal journey.
It is.
They're hit with freezing cold, strong winds, and falling rocks. It really shows how unforgiving that environment is.
It shows how vulnerable they are, these travelers, against the power of nature.
Right, and then just when you think it can't get worse, well, it does. They get ambushed and dragged down into a goblin town.
Oh. Goblins.
It's described as this endless darkness, a world only goblins can navigate. You can almost feel that darkness closing in on them.
It's suffocating.
It is. And the way the goblins treat them, it's awful.
Oh, yeah.
Pinching them, laughing at them, dragging them through these tight, confusing tunnels. Bilbo, who'd already had a rough time with the trolls, finds this even worse.
I bet he was wishing he was back in his hobbit hole.
I'm sure he was. And then something happens that changes everything. The goblins spot those swords, Glamdring and Orcrist.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, they recognize them instantly, calling them by their goblin names, Biter and Goblin Cleaver, and they're not happy about it.
No, they're not. It confirms that those swords are ancient elven weapons, and the goblins have good reason to be afraid of them. It makes things even more dangerous for the company.
It does. And the Great Goblin, he's furious. He attacks Thorin, but Gandalf steps in just in time.
Of course he does.
He puts out the lights, plunges the cave into darkness, and then kills the Great Goblin with Glamdring. It's a powerful moment. It shows how strong Gandalf is, how far he'll go to protect the company.
It's a turning point. Gandalf eliminates their leader and creates a chance for them to escape. That darkness, which was scary at first, now becomes their advantage.
It does. And they make a run for it, escaping from that goblin town with hordes of angry goblins on their tails.
It sounds chaotic.
It is. Bilbo's struggling to keep up. He ends up being carried by Dory. It shows you he's not built for this kind of rough and tumble escape.
He's a hobbit, not a warrior.
Exactly. He still needs the dwarves' help to stay safe.
He does.
But the danger's not over. They start hearing wolves, wargs, joining the chase.
Oh, great. More trouble.
And then, in all the chaos, Bilbo falls off Dory's shoulders, hits his head, and blacks out. It's a pretty rough ending to the chapter for our Hobbit hero, leaving him alone and vulnerable in those dark mountains.
This moment is crucial. It leaves Bilbo isolated in the most dangerous place imaginable, setting the stage for him to have his own adventures, his own transformation. It's a real turning point for him.
It is, and with that, we come to the end of our deep dive into these first chapters of The Hobbit. We've seen Bilbo's comfortable life turned upside down by a bunch of dwarves and a wizard. He's been dragged into a quest to reclaim lost treasure, facing trolls, finding some peace in Rivendell, and barely escaping from goblins and wolves in the Misty Mountains. It's been quite the journey for our reluctant hero.
And what's really striking is how Bilbo starts to change. Even though he's scared and misses his home, you can see glimpses of the resourceful, brave hobbit he's going to become. Even trying to help the dwarves fight the trolls, that shows he's willing to step outside his comfort zone.
That's a great point. And it leads us to a final thought for our listeners. Tolkien does this amazing thing. He blends everyday life, things like meals and dirty dishes, with the fantastical, magic swords, maps with secrets, mythical creatures. It's all mixed together. So how does that make the world so believable, so enduring for us as readers? And what does it say about adventure itself? Maybe it's about how adventure often comes from those moments when our ordinary lives are disrupted. Something to think about until our next deep dive into Middle-earth.
Definitely something to ponder.
It is.